Hello, my dear listeners. Please write in the comments from which city or country you are listening to us. And don't forget to subscribe and like. Enjoy the listening. Ethan Vance stood by the window of his small, almost ascetic apartment on the outskirts of Oak Haven City, watching as the first snowflakes slowly danced in the dim light of the street lamps. They fell like tiny white feathers, settling on the wet asphalt and rooftops, silently enveloping the city in a blanket of winter melancholy. Each flake of snow seemed to echo something lost, something that was once pure and innocent. A year ago, at this same time, it was completely different here. Back then, in the old building at the corner of Maple Street and 6th Avenue, life still flickered. Temple of Serenity. That was the name of the dojo that Master Victor Thorne, Alara's father, built with his own hands. Ethan closed his eyes and images rushed through his memory like an old scratched film. He felt the creak of the old polished floor beneath his feet, heard the echo of Master Victor's footsteps, light and confident, the chime of the bronze gong announcing the beginning of meditation, and sensed the special, almost meditative scent of sandalwood incense that always lingered in the temple, mingling with the smell of sweat and old wood. This was his home, his refuge, his world. He remembered how Master Victor, a man with eyes full of wisdom and kindness, first brought him, a 7-year-old boy, to the temple. Ethan had been a withdrawn, frightened child who had lost his parents and didn't know where to go. Master Victor didn't just teach him martial arts, he taught him how to live. He taught him that strength lies not in fists, but in the heart, that true victory is victory over oneself, over one's fears. He remembered how Master Victor would take his hand and show him how to breathe properly, how to calm the mind, how to find the center in movement. Your weakness is your greatest strength, Ethan, if you know how to use it, he often repeated. These words became the motto of Ethan's entire life. Now it was merely a shadow of former greatness, an abandoned shell holding the echo of unfulfilled hopes and unspoken regrets. Broken windows through which the piercing wind whistled. Faded frescoes depicting ancient masters now covered in dust. Dust that coated once shining floors. All of this was a living reminder of his failure, of what he could not protect. Ethan ran his hand across the fog glass, leaving a blurry trace as if trying to wipe away the invisible stains from his soul. Guilt was his constant companion, a heavy, oppressive burden he had carried since the day the lights went out in the temple. Master Victor, his mentor, his second father, the man who taught him not only martial arts but also life, had passed away suddenly under mysterious circumstances. Ethan was there. He should have protected, but he couldn't. He still heard in his dreams the dull thud, the sound that echoed through the narrow alley behind the temple, and saw the fleeting shadow disappearing into the night. This image haunted him, turning every night into torture and every day into an endless reminder of his helplessness. He was just a few steps away when it happened, but paralyzing fear, or an unexpected blow, or simply a fatal twist of fate immobilized him, robbing him of the ability to act. He could not forgive himself for that. He felt cold sweat trickling down his back as he recalled the moment when he froze, as if pinned to the ground, while life slipped from his mentor's eyes. The door creaked, and Alara Thorne entered the room. Her silhouette was shrouded in half-light, but Ethan felt her presence, as always, sharp and piercing. She embodied strength and fragility at the same time, with eyes reflecting the pain of loss and an unquenchable thirst for truth. They had known each other since childhood, growing up together within the walls of the temple, sharing dreams and secrets, spending hours training and engaging in philosophical discussions with Master Victor. Ilara, the master's daughter, was his first student, his right hand, and in her movements, in her words, one could sense the same grace and wisdom that characterized her father. Their bond was deep, almost familial, but after the death of Master Victor, it became even more complicated, burdened by shared grief and unspoken feelings that hung between them like an invisible web. Here again? Her voice was quiet, but it carried the steel that Ethan knew so well. She had always been his support, his conscience, his mirror reflecting his deepest fears and most cherished hopes. Ethan nodded, not taking his gaze from the window. as if trying to find answers in the falling snow. I can't sleep. Too many shadows. They haunt me, Alara. Shadows of the past. Shadows of what I couldn't do. I feel like I've let them all down. Everyone. Master Victor. The temple, myself. Alara approached him, her gaze fixed on the snow-covered streets that were slowly turning into a white canvas. The shadows will always be there until we light a fire. Ethan knew she was talking about the temple, about her father's legacy, about what they had both lost, and about the unspoken feelings between them that were as heavy as their grief. But how, Ethan? How can we light a fire when there is such darkness around? When it seems that everything we loved is destroyed? When the enemy is invisible and omnipresent, like a shadow that consumes everything in its path? They won't stop, Ilara, Ethan said, his voice hoarse, filled with despair. They have already destroyed everything once. They won't let us revive the temple, the Obsidian Collective. They are too strong. They control everything. They are like a shadow that devours light, leaving only emptiness behind. Then we must be smarter, she replied, turning to him. In her eyes burned a fire that Ethan had only seen in her father's eyes. It was a fire of defiance, a fire of faith in better things, a fire that could not be extinguished. Father left me something, what he called the last lesson. I don't understand what it is yet, but I feel it is the key. He always said that true strength is not in crushing, but in rebirth, in finding balance in chaos, in using one's own vulnerability as a point of growth. He said that the strongest warrior is the one who can accept their weakness and turn it into strength. He said that the phoenix always rises from the ashes, and that it is in the fire of trials that we find our true essence. She was speaking of the path of the phoenix, a unique philosophy of Master Victor that differed from all other martial arts schools. Their technique was not aimed at destruction, but at balance, at redirecting the opponent's energy, at using one's own vulnerability as a point of growth. Master Victor taught that true strength was not brute power, but the ability to adapt, to heal, and to help others heal. He believed in the power of community, in the idea that every person, even the broken, could rise from the ashes, becoming stronger than they were before. He taught that every blow, every pain, was not an end, but merely an opportunity for transformation. He often said, "Your weakness is your greatest strength if you know how to use it." A true warrior does not avoid pain. They pass through it, becoming stronger. This philosophy was a direct threat to the Obsidian Collective, which preached only brute force and dominance. The Obsidian Collective. The name lodged itself in Ethan's mind like a splinter, like a poisonous thorn that wouldn't let him rest. It was not just a competing school. It was a shadowy organization that, under the guise of modern martial arts, sought total control, suppressing any alternative teachings. They did not just compete, they absorbed, destroyed, erased from existence everything that did not conform to their dogmas. Their modern martial arts were devoid of soul. It was merely brute force and control aimed at suppression. Their training was brutal, their methods ruthless. Rumors circulated about mysterious disappearances, about schools that suddenly closed without explanation, about young talented students being lured away by the collective and losing their individuality, becoming mere cogs in their soulless machine. Master Victor received direct threats, anonymous letters with the symbol of black obsidian, strange phone calls where the voice on the other end promised purification and destruction of heresy. He remembered how one day 2 men in black suits came to the temple, their faces inscrutable and their eyes cold as ice. They were called Grayson and Stone, and their reputation preceded them. They tried to recruit several senior students, promising them true power and limitless possibilities, authority and recognition. Master Victor calmly but firmly refused them, stating that the temple teaches not the power over others, but the power within oneself, that true greatness lies in service, not in dominance. The men left, but their gazes were full of hidden threats, and Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Now Ethan understood how naive they had been in their faith in good, how underestimated the enemy was. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp, piercing ring of the phone. Ethan frowned. The number was unfamiliar, but something in his subconscious screamed danger, as if an ancient instinct had awakened. He picked up the receiver. His heart raced, drowning out the sound of snowflakes hitting the glass. "Coach Vance?" The voice on the other end was shaky, filled with panic, barely audible over the noise of sirens and distant screams in the background. This, this is Rachel, Maya Sterling's mom. Do you remember Maya? The 10-year-old Maya who always smiled, the one who was the fastest and lightest in the temple, like a butterfly flitting across the mat? What happened, Rachel? I hear sirens. Where are you? What's going on? Ethan's voice was on the verge of breaking. He felt a chill run down his spine, foretelling trouble. Maya, 10-year-old Maya, one of the most talented and cheerful students of the temple, before everything fell apart. She embodied the way of the phoenix, light, swift, with eyes full of fire and unbridled energy, with a soul that shone brighter than the sun. "An accident," Rachel whispered, her voice breaking as if she were gasping, each word forced out. "At the corner of Brook Avenue and 14th Street. A truck. It didn't stop. It ran a red light. Maya, she's in the hospital. I think it wasn't an accident, Ethan. It didn't slow down, didn't even try to turn. It just went through as if it knew what it was doing, as if it was intentional. I saw him, Ethan. He had a symbol, obsidian." The world around Ethan narrowed down to a single point. The truck didn't stop, obsidian. As if it were an echo of something long forgotten but deeply embedded in his memory. The echo of that very day when he lost Master Victor. His hands trembled as he lowered the receiver. He felt cold sweat trickling down his temples, and his heart pounded in his chest like a bird trapped in a cage. They arrived at the hospital long before dawn. Oak Haven City still slept under the blanket of a winter night. Only a few streetlights cast dim patches of light on the wet asphalt, creating ghostly shadows. The sky in the east was just beginning to lighten, with a soft, gray hue, as if someone had forgotten to finish painting the morning, leaving it unfinished and full of foreboding. Ethan burst into the waiting room, his lungs burning from running, and his heart beating a mad rhythm in his chest. He was still in the same sweatshirt he had fallen asleep in a few hours earlier, and its smell reminded him of a non-existent peace. He scanned the empty, sterile room, where the bright fluorescent lights mercilessly exposed every speck of dust and every rustle, every breath, and every movement. Rachel sat hunched in a plastic chair, her once bright hair disheveled, and her face, usually rosy and cheerful, was pale as paper. Her eyes were wide with shock, frozen in unbearable horror, as if she had seen something impossible to forget, something that would stay with her forever. She looked as if she had just been pulled from icy water, her lips trembling, trying to form words that stuck in her throat, unwilling to come out. Ethan knelt beside her, feeling his own strength leaving him, his body becoming heavy and unresponsive. He wanted to say something, but the words caught in his throat. He simply took her cold, trembling hand, trying to convey even a little of his warmth, even a little of his strength. "She's in surgery," she whispered, not looking up, her voice empty, devoid of any emotion, as if she were merely a shell. "A complex femur fracture. The doctor said it could be very serious. They said it would take many hours. Maybe she will never be the same." Ethan sank down beside her, his body moving slower than his thoughts, as if he were pushing through a thick fog that enveloped his mind. He felt useless, powerless, as if his hands were tied. "She'll be okay," he mumbled, more to himself than to her, trying to convince himself that this was just a terrible nightmare that would soon end, and they would all wake up in a world where the temple still stood and Master Victor was alive. Rachel exhaled shakily, her shoulders shaking from invisible sobs that tore her apart from the inside. The doctor said, "The bone may heal, but she may not regain full range of motion. Not enough for sports. She will never be able to dance again like before. She will never be able to kick again." The words sounded like a quiet shot, piercing the silence of the hospital room, echoing in Ethan's ears. Not a scream, but a final verdict that shattered all hopes, all dreams. The world around Ethan faded. The doctor's words struck like a hammer on an anvil, shattering Maya's dreams, her future, her laughter. Ethan stared at the floor, his fists clenched so tightly that the knuckles turned white, and his nails dug into his palms. I should have been there for her. I promised her, Rachel. I promised that she would be able to keep growing, to keep standing, to keep dancing, to keep kicking. I promised her that the temple would always be her place of strength, her refuge. And I didn't keep my promise. I let her down again. Joe, no, don't do this, Ilara said, approaching them. She placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, and he felt warmth that momentarily chased away the icy cold inside. Her presence was like an anchor in the raging sea of his despair, like a quiet but steady voice in the chaos that enveloped him. She can still do it. She will find her way, Ethan. She always has. She is the phoenix. She will rise. She is stronger than you think. A few hours later, Naomi, their old friend from the temple, appeared, dressed in a thick gray coat without makeup, her face weary but her eyes full of compassion and understanding. She was older than Ethan and Ilara, and her wisdom flowed like a quiet river through their lives. Naomi was one of Master Victor's first students, who came to him after losing a child and found solace and a new purpose in life at the temple. She said nothing, simply sat between them, placing one hand on Rachel's shoulder and the other on Ethan's hand. Then she handed them thermoses of hot tea and blankets she had brought with her, her movements slow and caring, as if she were the embodiment of care itself. Sometimes the best leaders say nothing. Their presence is felt as an invisible but strong support, like a quiet harbor in a storm where one can find peace. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face was haggard and his eyes were red from fatigue, but there was a glimmer of hope in them. Ethan stood up before he even realized it. His legs felt like jelly, and his heart pounded in his chest as if trying to break free. She's stable, the doctor said, his voice tired but carrying a note of relief. The surgery was successful, but recovery will be long. Months of physical therapy, perhaps years. She will need support, a community, a lot of patience, and a lot of faith. Faith in herself, faith in her strength. Ilara's voice was soft yet firm, like stone, as if she drew strength from an invisible source within her. She has it. She has us. She has the circle. We will be her support. A week passed before Maya opened her eyes. Her gaze was hazy, but already a spark of curiosity, a spark of life, burned within it. The first thing she saw was a faded poster that Ethan had pinned to the hospital wall, a photograph of an old dojo mat, the very one with barely visible chalk outlines, where once Mason, one of Master Victor's most talented students, marked the places for feet. It was their secret sign, their unspoken promise to carry on, no matter what, their symbol of hope that had always been with them. Her voice was thin, barely a whisper, as if she feared to disturb the silence that enveloped her. Coach Vance? Ethan leaned in, squeezing her small, weak hand, his heart tightening with pain and tenderness. I'm here, little one. I'm here. I won't go anywhere. I'll always be by your side. She blinked, her gaze still hazy, but already a question that tormented her was evident in her eyes. Did I fall wrong? Did I make a mistake? Was I not good enough? Is this my fault? He forced out a trembling laugh, trying to hide the pain that tore at him from within. No, Maya. The world just dealt a heavy blow, a very heavy one. But you withstood it, Maya. You endured. You coped. And you will cope again. You are stronger than you think. You are a true phoenix. She fell silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the ceiling, as if she were searching for answers in the invisible stars, in the endless space above her. Will I still be able to kick? Will I be able to dance? Will I be able to be like I was before? Will I be able to return to the temple? Ethan swallowed, feeling the lump rise in his throat. He couldn't lie to her, but he also couldn't take away her hope. Not for a while, Maya. It will be a long road, a very long one. But someday you will be able to. I'm not lying to you. It will be hard, but you can do it. We will be there. We will walk this path together. We will find a new way. I don't know. She stared at the ceiling, her eyes filled with tears. But she did not cry. Her gaze was full of determination that struck Ethan. Then maybe it's time to learn something new. something that doesn't require legs, something that can't be taken away, something that will always be with me. Ethan blinked, astonished by her resilience, her spirit that had not broken, no matter what. For example, what? Maya smiled faintly, and in that smile Ethan saw a glimpse of the very fire that had always burned in her eyes, the very spirit that made her so special. Balance, not just physical, but inner balance. The kind Master Victor spoke of. He said that true balance is when you can stand firm even when the ground shifts beneath you, when you can find your center in chaos, when you can be calm inside, even when a storm rages around you. This was their first lesson, taught not by a teacher, but by a student who, despite everything, continued to seek the light, continued to fight, continued to believe in the path of the phoenix. It was powerful. A few nights later, Alara stood in Ethan's small kitchen, helping him stir instant coffee. Outside, the snow continued to fall, creating a cozy yet melancholic atmosphere, as if the world around was frozen in anticipation of something new. Maya slept in the next room, her breathing steady and calm, as if she had finally found peace after all her trials. "She is stronger than both of us," Alara said, her voice thoughtful, as if she were contemplating something deep, the meaning of life. "Her spirit is unbroken. She is a true phoenix. She has shown us what it means to be strong." Ethan nodded, looking into his cup, his thoughts far away, in the past, in the temple. "She doesn't know how to give up. She is a true phoenix. And I still feel broken. I still feel guilt. I can still see his face." Ilara leaned against the counter, watching him, her gaze soft, filled with understanding and compassion. "You do too. You keep fighting, Ethan. Even when it seems like all is lost. Even when you feel like you can't go on. That is strength. That is the way of the phoenix. It's not about being perfect, but about being real, about being true to yourself." Ethan froze, the spoon hovering over the cup, his shoulders sagging under the weight of an invisible burden he carried with him. "Sometimes I feel like I'm holding on by duct tape and borrowed time, that I'm about to fall apart, that I can't take it anymore, that I'm not worthy." Ilara stepped closer, their faces just inches apart, their breath mingling in the cold air, creating an invisible connection. "Most heroes started that way, Ethan, with cracks, with doubts. But it is in those cracks that the light shines through. It is those that make us stronger. It is those that give us the chance to be reborn. You are a hero, Ethan. You are my hero." They stood in silence, just inches apart. The steam from the coffee rose between them like breath, creating an invisible veil that shielded them from the world. Alara reached out and gently touched his chest, right above his heart. "You know, for someone who no longer wears a uniform, you still carry command within you. You are still a leader. You are still my teacher. You are still my mentor." Ethan looked at her, his eyes full of questions, his heart pounding in his chest like a bird caught in a cage. "And for someone who has stopped believing in happy endings." Ilara raised an eyebrow, a light smile playing on her lips, full of tenderness and hope. "You are starting to look like one of them, like one who creates them, like one who brings light to this world, like one who gives second chances." That weekend, the circle gathered again. They didn't advertise, didn't put up flyers. The word just spread, like a whisper on the wind, from one heart to another, from one soul to another, from one person to another. Old students who had lost faith, parents searching for meaning, children who needed a place where they could be themselves, where they were accepted as they are, without judgment. Someone told a neighbor, someone told a gym friend, someone simply told a passerby on the street who looked lost. People came because they needed healing, because they were searching for something real in a world full of falsehoods and deceit, in a world where it seemed like all was lost. Ilara opened the session, her voice clear and strong, filling the small room with energy and hope. "This is not about competition," she said, scanning the faces filled with hope and doubt, fear and anticipation. "It's about coming back to life, about finding your rhythm, remembering why we move and why we are still important. It's about finding your inner phoenix that lives in each of us. It's about rising from the ashes." Ethan led the warm-up. Simple movements, gentle breathing, controlled steps. He taught them not only physical exercises, but also the principles of the way of the phoenix, how to redirect energy, how to use breath to calm the mind, how to find center in movement, even when it seems like everything around is falling apart. He shared stories of Master Victor, his wise parables that helped them understand the deeper meaning of each movement, each word. He taught them how to use their pain as fuel, how to turn fear into strength. Then at the end, he stepped to the center of the circle. "I want to share something," he said. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him, as if he were the only source of light in the darkness. "I used to believe that strength is measured by how much weight you can carry, by how many blows you can take, by how many times you can win. But lately I've realized that it is measured by what you are willing to let go of pride, guilt, fear, of everything that keeps you from being real, of everything that holds you in the past. And Maya, she showed us this. She is living proof that broken things can become the most beautiful, that from ashes one can rise stronger than before, that even after the most terrible trials one can find new meaning." He looked over at Maya, who was sitting in her wheelchair, watching. Her eyes were attentive, full of pride and new understanding. She is not weaker because she cannot stand. She is stronger because she still wants to, because she continues to fight, continues to seek balance, continues to inspire us all. She is our phoenix. She is our inspiration. Maya gave him a thumbs up, her face beaming with a wide smile, full of gratitude and joy. The group smiled back, and warmth spread through the room, as if an invisible fire had ignited in every heart, warming them from within. The moment lingered, soft and sacred, filled with new meaning, new promise, new hope. Ilara closed her eyes, allowing the warmth of this moment to settle within her, as if she were absorbing every particle of hope that hung in the air. She whispered almost to herself, "This is what my father dreamed of. Not business, not a brand, but a place where broken things could start anew. A place where everyone could find their path to rebirth, no matter how deep their wounds. A place where everyone could become a phoenix." Ethan heard her, and somewhere in that silence, they both knew that this was not the end of something. It was a rebirth of the temple, a rebirth of their souls, a rebirth of hope, a rebirth of everything they believed in. Snow slowly swirled outside the windows, thin, soft, silent, enveloping Oak Haven City in a winter fairy tale. Each snowflake now seemed a symbol of purity and new beginnings. Inside, in the rented community room behind the old post office, folding chairs surrounded an improvised mat. The circle had grown its roots in the storage room. There was no budget, no heating, but it was full of people, their voices filling the space, creating a living, breathing organism that grew and evolved. Children stretched, their laughter filling the space like music. Parents adjusted thermoses of hot tea and cocoa, sharing stories and smiles, finding comfort and support in one another. Someone brought candies, batteries twinkling like small determined spirits, creating a cozy, almost magical atmosphere. And at the center of it all sat Maya. Her wheelchair was a new part of the circle, not outside of it. It was a symbol of her resilience, her strength, her indomitable spirit. She wore a fresh kimono, a gift from Jax, her name carefully embroidered above her heart, like a promise, like an oath she had made to herself and to everyone around. Ethan stood beside her, holding something in both hands, a belt. Not black, not white, but a deep slate gray, a color that contained both ends of the spectrum, the color of rain before blooming, the color of strength before light. It was the color of uncertainty that precedes change, the color of the path that must be walked to find true strength. It was the belt of hope, the belt of faith, the belt of rebirth. "This," he said to the group, his voice full of solemnity, yet resonating with deep tenderness, "is not part of any sanctioned ranking system. It is not about technique or the number of victories. It is about something much greater. It is about spirit. It is about heart." He looked at Maya, and in his eyes shone the pride that overwhelmed him, pride in her incredible strength. "But today we are creating our own system. We are creating our own rank, a rank that is measured by heart, a rank that is measured by resilience, A rank that is measured by the ability to be reborn. A rank that is measured by the ability to be a phoenix. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on Maya, as if she were the center of the universe, a source of light and inspiration. Ethan turned to her and knelt down so their eyes were level. Maya, you have taught us more in the past few months than some people learn in a lifetime. About how to stand when you can't, about how to lead without shouting, about how you don't need legs to bear weight. You showed us that true strength is not the absence of weakness, but the ability to accept it and keep moving forward. You showed us what it means to be a phoenix. You are our teacher. You are our example. Maya blinked, holding back tears that slowly rolled down her cheeks. These were not tears of sorrow, but of gratitude and new awareness. Tears of joy and pride that flowed freely. This belt, Ethan continued, his voice soft yet firm, like a whisper of the wind, is not for technique. It is for truth. It is for your spirit. It is for your heart. It is for your soul. You don't have to wear it if you don't want to. It's your choice, your path, your destiny. Maya's voice was quiet but firm, like a whisper of the wind, full of determination. I want to. I want to wear it. I want to be a phoenix. I want to be part of this circle. I want to be a teacher. He carefully tied it around her waist. It lay there like a vow, like a promise, like a symbol of her incredible resilience and her new path that was just beginning. Ilara watched from the corner, arms crossed, her heart beating with something old and new at the same time. Pride for Maya, longing for her father, and a sense of completion that she felt in that moment. She stepped forward, clearing her throat, her eyes filled with deep meaning. I have something too, she said. From her coat pocket, she pulled out a small wooden box, intricately carved, with symbols of ancient runes engraved on it that Master Victor had once studied, and opened it. Inside lay a polished badge, round, with an engraved phoenix rising from the knot of the belt. It shimmered in the dim light, as if alive, radiating warmth and light. This was designed by my father before he left, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. But she held firm, her gaze steady. He never got to give it to anyone. He said it would be for someone who could carry his dream forward, someone who could revive the temple, even in his absence, for someone who could be his continuation, for someone who could become his legacy. She approached Ethan, her gaze filled with deep meaning and tenderness, full of love. But I think he would have chosen you. You didn't just help restore the dojo. You restored me. You restored his dream. You became his continuation. You became his legacy. Ethan blinked, his eyes wide with surprise and emotion, his heart pounding in his chest as if trying to break free. Ilara pinned the badge to his sleeve, her fingers gently brushing against his skin, and he felt warmth spread throughout his body. This is not a title, she said. This is gratitude, for carrying what could not be carried, for showing up again and again, even when the room fell into darkness, for not giving up, Ethan, for always being there, for being my phoenix. He looked at her, his eyes wide, full of questions and unspoken words, full of love. Ilara! She smiled, and in that smile was so much warmth and tenderness, so much hope, so many promises. You didn't just help restore the dojo. You restored me. You returned my faith. You returned my life. A pause hung in the air between them, an unspoken something whispered on that day, something too deep to express in words. It was an acknowledgement, a promise, hope, love. When I first appeared, curled up, thinking I was invisible, Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible, full of pain and regret. You really didn't recognize me. You didn't remember me. You didn't see me. Ilara hesitated, her gaze dropping, as if she were trying to hide her true feelings, but her eyes betrayed her. I knew, Ethan. I recognized you right away. Your eyes, your spirit, your resilience. I remembered you from childhood. I remembered every conversation we had, every training session. But back then it hurt so much, it was so scary to hope again. I was afraid that if I acknowledged you, I would lose everything once more. I was afraid to open myself up to pain again, to lose someone dear to me again. I was afraid to love again. And now, Ethan gently reached out, lifting her chin, making her look into his eyes. His gaze was full of hope and tenderness, full of love. Elara swallowed, her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope, tears of liberation, tears of joy. Now I hope every day. I hope for every new meeting, for every glance from you, for every word we share. I hope that we can build something new together, that we can create something that will be stronger than any darkness, stronger than any obsidian collective. I hope for us, Ethan. I hope for our love. Adir, someone coughed, breaking the magic of the moment, but not destroying it. The moment was interrupted, but it did not disappear. It lingered in the warmth that filled the room, like breath in winter, reminding of the fragility and strength of human connections, of the eternity of love. Jax, an old friend and loyal follower of Master Victor, stepped forward, his voice full of energy and enthusiasm. He was tall, with broad shoulders and kind eyes, always ready to help, always ready to support. He was one of Master Victor's first students, who found not only martial arts in the temple, but also a sense of life after losing his family in a tragic accident. He knew what pain was and understood what healing meant. I believe, he said, it is time for our final ceremony, a ceremony that will live forever, a ceremony that will show the world that we are here, that we are strong, that we have been reborn. The group turned to the large roll of canvas, now laid out against the back wall. It was blank, like a clean slate waiting for a new story, a new life, new hopes. Instead of a photograph or a certificate, Ilara explained, her voice full of enthusiasm, we are creating a map, a living map of everyone who has passed through this place, not for rank, but for presence. To remember that each of us is important, each of us is part of this circle, each of us is a phoenix, each of us is a hero. She distributed brushes and ink made from natural pigments that Master Victor once used for his calligraphic works, for his art. One by one, children and parents approached and left their marks on the canvas. Handprints, names, words of courage, symbols that held meaning for them. A young mother who came to the circle after a severe depression left a print of her hand and wrote, "Hope." An elderly man who lost his wife and found solace in the meditations of the circle left a print of his fist and wrote, "Peace." A child with social anxiety who was afraid to speak left a bright palm print and drew a small heart, a symbol of his newfound openness. Each mark was a testament to their presence, their choice to stay, their faith in rebirth, their faith in themselves. When it was Ethan's turn, he did not hesitate. He dipped his palm in the paint and firmly pressed it to the corner of the canvas. Then beneath it, he wrote, "Strength in the choice to stay." It was his personal creed, his redemption, his new beginning, his promise. When Maya came next, she smirked, her eyes shining, full of mischief and determination. "I want to leave a print of my foot," she said. The room chuckled softly, and Jax carefully helped her. He lifted her foot, and she gently pressed her cast against the fabric, leaving a shaky gray print. Above it, in a steady hand, she wrote, "Still kicking." It was her statement to the world, her anthem of resilience, her promise to never give up, her victory. Ilara was last in line. She did not leave a handprint. Instead, she took out a small photograph from her pocket. Faded, with curled corners, it held the warmth of a time gone by. In it, Master Victor, laughing, embraces young Ilara in casual clothing. Their eyes closed in the joy of a moment captured too soon. He was there, invisibly, but his legacy lived on. She pinned it to the top of the canvas. No signature, just legacy. Later that night, when the hall had emptied and the chairs were stacked, Ethan stood outside with Ilara, their breath swirling in the cold, turning into little clouds in the light of the street lamps. Snow continued to fall, but now it felt not melancholic, but soothing, as if nature itself was blessing them. "Do you think they'll ever return our certification?" he asked, his voice quiet, but laced with hope. Elora looked at him, her eyes full of wisdom and calm. "We've built something better. Permission. Permission to be ourselves, permission to heal, permission to be reborn. No papers or threats can take that away. It's within us. It's our true strength. He nodded. Still, it wouldn't hurt to be official, so no one can shut us down again. So the Obsidian Collective can't reach us. So they can't destroy what we built. She smirked, her eyes sparkling with a mischievous glint. Maybe someday, but for now we have this. We have the circle. And that is enough. More than enough. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as the snow began to fall again. Soft, swirling, endless, as if the world around them was holding its breath in anticipation of something new, something beautiful. Ilara turned to him, her hand gently resting on his cheek, her fingers cool, but her touch warm. You know, if this were a movie, we would kiss right here. Ethan smiled, his heart racing in anticipation. We're not in a movie. No, she said, her voice full of tenderness and deep meaning. We're in something better, in something real, in something we are building ourselves, in something that will live forever. Then she stepped forward, resting her head against his chest, and they stood there, not kissing, not pretending, just breathing, whole, alive together. It was a kiss without lips, a kiss of souls that was far deeper and more significant than any cinematic gesture. It was the first sip of water after a long drought, the first ray of sunshine after a long night. It was a promise of a new dawn, a promise of eternal love, a promise of new life. 1 year later, the snow returned, but this time it did not feel like something to fight against. It felt like a memory coming home, like an old friend coming to visit. The building at the corner of Maple Street and 6th Avenue had once been a faded hardware store, forgotten and abandoned, its walls covered in graffiti and its windows broken. Now it shone with new life. A new sign hung above it, made of dark wood with golden letters that glimmered in the light of the street lamps. Circle Community, Courage, Connection, Healing. The red bricks were cleaned, the windows sparkled, and a small flower bed stood in front of the door, a reminder of the constancy of life and the beauty of rebirth. Inside, laughter echoed off the freshly painted walls, filling the space with joy and energy. The air was filled with the scent of fresh wood and a light aroma of incense that Alara made herself from Master Victor's recipes. In one corner stood a small library nook, filled with books on resilience, mindfulness, and martial arts philosophy, many of which were written by Master Victor himself. Above it hung frames with sketches, gifts from Maya, who was now 11 years old and full of fire. The sketches depicted people moving with grace despite scars, phoenixes soaring into the sky, and a circle symbolizing unity and infinity. Ethan stood at the back of the main hall, quietly adjusting the straps on a new student's gloves. The boy's name was Marcus, and he was 10 years old. Quiet, yet fierce, when his eyes locked onto a target. He reminded Ethan of himself in his youth. The same spark in his eyes, the same thirst for knowledge, the same hidden strength. Coach Vance, Marcus whispered, his eyes filled with hope and anticipation. Do you think I'll ever be able to become a black belt? As strong as you? As wise as Master Victor? Ethan smiled, his gaze soft and wise, full of understanding. That depends, Marcus. It depends on whether you're willing to fail more times than most people are willing to try. Are you ready to fall and get back up again and again? Are you willing to learn from your mistakes, to turn them into lessons? That is true strength. That is the way of the phoenix. That is the path to the black belt. Marcus nodded as if he understood more than his age suggested, his eyes filled with determination. He bowed. Ethan bowed in return. Across the room, Alara was leading a group of parents helping their children stretch. She wore a soft gray sweater, and around her neck hung a lanyard with a badge, a phoenix that Ethan once wore. Now it was hers, symbolizing her own rebirth and her role in the new community. Her eyes met Ethan's across the room. He winked. She shook her head, half playfully, half affectionately, her heart overflowing with happiness and pride for what they had created together. In the corner sat Jax, sipping tea from an old clay mug and watching all of this with the quiet pride of a gardener observing a bloom, seeing his seeds bear fruit. He was happy that his life had found meaning again, that he had found a new family in the circle. Maya stepped into the center of the mat, Her braces had been replaced with lightweight exoskeletal supports, still visible under her pants. But now they were just a part of her, not a cage or scaffolding. She moved with confidence, showcasing movements she had adapted for herself, demonstrating incredible grace and strength that emanated from her spirit. She was the living embodiment of the way of the phoenix, its brightest example. Ethan clapped his hands, his voice filling the hall, drawing everyone's attention. Everyone gather around. The students formed a semicircle, their eyes filled with anticipation and curiosity. Jack stepped forward beside Ethan, holding a small, intricately carved box. Ethan addressed the group, his voice full of emotion, his eyes shining. Today marks 1 year since our first meeting in the circle. 1 year ago, we were broken, lost, but we found each other. We found strength in unity, in support, in faith. We found a new home. He pointed to the walls, to the living map, to the faces around, to each person in this circle. Back then, we had nothing. No mats, no certificates, just a cracked floor and a handful of people who believed that broken things could still hold weight. That from ashes, one could rise again. That even after the most terrible losses, one could find new meaning. He looked at Maya, and in his eyes shone boundless love and pride. And now we have taken root. We have grown. We have earned something better than rank. We have earned trust. Trust in each other, trust in ourselves, trust in the way of the phoenix. We have earned the right to be happy. We have earned the right to live. Ilara opened the box and revealed a black belt, carefully embroidered with Maya's name and a character meaning honor through healing. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the belt that shone in the light like a jewel, like a symbol of a new era, a new hope. Ethan turned to Maya, his eyes filled with tears, but he smiled, his voice full of deep meaning. Maya, this isn't about kicking higher or harder. It's not about being the fastest or the strongest. It's about that day when you stood up for someone else when your own legs could not. About the time when you kept showing up when it hurt. About never letting anyone define your finish line. Your strength lies in your ability to adapt, in your spirit that never breaks. You are a true phoenix, Maya. You have shown us all what it means to rise from the ashes. You are our teacher. You are our example. You are our inspiration. He tied the belt around her, slowly, carefully, reverently, as if performing a sacred ritual. When he finished, Maya reached out and hugged him tightly, her tears flowing down his shoulder, but they were tears of joy and gratitude. Thank you for not giving up, she whispered, her voice full of gratitude and love. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for showing me that I can. Thank you for being you. Ethan squeezed her hand, his heart overflowing with happiness. Thank you for never letting me forget why I started. Thank you for showing me the way. Thank you for being you. You are my phoenix. Applause erupted, first timidly, then growing louder, filling the hall with joy and jubilation. The room vibrated with warmth, happiness, and a sense of unity. Not loud, not bright, just honest. Later, after the ceremony, Ilara stood next to Ethan by the window as snowflakes dusted the sidewalk, creating a sparkling carpet that shimmered in the light of the street lamps. "Do you miss this?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with curiosity. "The old dojo, the name, Master Victor's legacy?" Ethan looked out at the street where parents were loading their children into cars, while others sipped hot cocoa from a thermos that read, "Be kind or be quiet." "You know," he said, his gaze thoughtful, "legacies are not sums that can be counted. They are circles. They expand, encompassing more and more people, more and more hearts. And that is far more important than any building or name. It is a living, breathing legacy. It is what we are building here." Ilara nodded, her eyes full of understanding and agreement. "So, what shall we call this chapter?" Ethan turned to her, his eyes shining, full of new hope. "The beginning, the true beginning, the start of something great, the beginning of our story." She smiled, her lips curving into a gentle smile. "You've always been better at endings. But I'm glad you're wrong. This is just the beginning of our story, the beginning of our love." He stepped closer, their bodies almost touching, their breaths mingling in the cold air. Alara, yes? Her voice was barely audible, full of anticipation. I think I'm in love with you. She didn't flinch, didn't joke, didn't pull away. She simply took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his, as if they had always been meant for each other. You're not the only one. Then she leaned in and kissed him. Not hurriedly, not cinematically, not passionately, just quietly, deservedly, like the first sip of water after a long drought, the first ray of sunshine after a long night. It was a promise of a new dawn, a promise of eternal love, a promise of new life, a promise of happiness. Behind them, Maya approached Jax, who handed her a leather-bound notebook, its pages blank, waiting for new entries. What is this? She asked, her eyes full of curiosity and anticipation. Your first coaching journal, he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. If you're going to be the youngest assistant instructor this place has ever seen, you better be ready. You're going to teach others, Maya. Pass on the way of the phoenix. Pass on its legacy. Maya smiled widely, her face lighting up, her eyes shining. I already have lesson number 1. She opened the first page. In large black letters, written in Master Victor's firm hand, it read, The belt does not make you invincible. It proves you already are. Jack smirked, his eyes full of pride and admiration. You'll do great, kid. You already are. You are our phoenix. You are our hope. As the lights dimmed and people began to head home, carrying warmth and hope with them, the circle remained open just a little longer, for those who are lagging behind, for the children who needed just one more minute of safety, for the parents who have yet to find the words, and for a world that, despite its broken places, still found ways to bow, rise, and begin anew. Because strength lies not in perfection, but in perseverance. And sometimes the most broken things become the most beautiful.